Hey everybody, welcome to Startup Talk. This is John Bradley Jackson, also known as JJ. And Startup Talk is all about startups and people that are creating things and inventing things. And it's my pleasure to do this. I'm a professor at Cal State Fullerton. I teach entrepreneurship. I'm director of the Center for Entrepreneurship. And in that capacity, I also run a couple of incubators where I help companies get started. I'm also an angel investor. I created an angel fund called Titan Angels. And so there's actually an ecosystem at play at Cal State Fullerton for startups, which is rather unique. My background is the world of Silicon Valley, as well as finance. And I have gone on to this third career in academics. Titan Radio is internet radio, and it's broadcast in 130 countries. It's kind of funny. I'll find myself pausing now and then when I hear. I think to myself, well, there's somebody in Zimbabwe who's listening, and will he or she understand what I mean? But I was coached by our guests that English is a universal language and widely understood. And in fact, our guest today is George J. Michael, who's the founder of Life Balance Foundation. Welcome, George.
Well, hello, JJ. This is exciting.
We're really happy to have you here. For our audience, maybe you can, you're the founder of Life Balance Foundation, so what the heck is that?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say hello to everyone who's listening, and I'd like to thank you and California State University at Fullerton for this invitation. This is it's kind of exciting. We're introducing a major scientific breakthrough that relates to people everywhere, so thanks for the opportunity. So what is the Life Balance Foundation? I believe people have a great amount of ability they're not being taught how to use. So the purpose of the Life Balance Foundation, which we call the world leader for balanced living, is to guide and support those who want to overcome challenges, elevate their life, and teach children. That's what our work is based on a powerful new psychology. And integrated behavioral science is a more realistic and effective social science than anything that has come before. So it's an opportunity for people to overcome their challenges and reach their full potential, and that's the purpose of our existence. And I'd like to speak directly with people who are listening. You have hurts and challenges and insecurity. We all do. At the same time, you have real talent and ability that's not being used. So balance is learning how to activate all the power and the blessings you've been given the day you are born. And Life Balance Foundation works hard to provide practical guidance to make good things happen.
Okay, I get it. So, I was doing some reading on the materials you've given me, and you make a strong declarative statement that the world is out of balance. What does that mean?
Well, that's kind of obvious. School shootings, epidemics of obesity, opioids, stress-related illness, tension and social conflict increasing, our environment in decline. Just some numbers here. Over 1 in 5 adults are on pain pills or psych meds. Kids are hooked on cell phones and junk food. There's over 22 veteran suicides each day, and people are struggling to the edge. And with all our technical wonders, you got to ask yourself, what's gone wrong? I mean, what's happening to our quality of life? And so these are the questions I've wrestled with. I started looking for a new psychology. It's fun being on campus. It reminds me when I first took on the challenge to develop a new psychology in 1969. And what I've found is that over the course of 50 years, I've observed the way psychology has developed. And frankly, there have been some small improvements, but there have been some real disasters where people have become so dependent on technology rather than the inner qualities, the abilities, what I call their elements, to become a complete success in their life.
So there are a lot of tools out there today in the toolbox, and I'll use the word mental health carefully.
Okay.
Because, but there's like talk therapy, whether it's you go to the psychotherapist, the psychiatrist.
Yes.
Isn't that working?
When I studied talk 50 years ago, it was slow and inefficient, and it certainly isn't keeping pace with today's challenge. No, it's just not comprehensive enough. It's a very limited approach to activating a human being's full potential. And, it's great. I work in healthcare and as an addiction counselor. And when a good counselor makes a connection, a heartfelt connection with a client who's going through very tough times, you can move that person towards a healthier life. But it's a very inefficient process, and integrative behavioral science is designed to use all the human resources to engage a person and give them access to every bit of power that, like I said, they were given the day they were born.
And that integrative behavioral science is, correct me if I'm wrong, you describe it as body, mind, heart, and spirit.
Those are the basic elements. And those elements have been recognized for thousands of years in Hindu philosophy. Classic Greek civilization is a great example. I mean, these folks, they were agrarian, seafaring people. The gods were part of their daily culture and theater. They were obviously very astute. We had Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. They're obviously very well schooled. And they were physically active. So, and of course, being an agrarian, seafaring society, they spent a lot of time outdoors. Classic Greek civilization embodied the principles of integrative behavioral science 3,000 years ago. And of course, we know that Sparta and Athens and the Greek civilization, they were at the crossroads of civilization, and they withstood tremendous forces and challenges because they were fully activated people. And that's why I'm bringing this up to date and developed it as a science, because it's the source. It's the source of ability and success and achievement that people are looking for, but they're only given part of the message. And again, talk therapy is a very limited approach to engaging a person.
So there are other tools, and the one that troubles me the most would be the psych meds. I saw something today, coincidentally, that 1 in 6 people in the U.S. is taking some type of psych med. That's just astounding.
That is a tragedy, actually. Mm-hmm. As an addiction caregiver and counselor, we see this all the time. In fact, let me give you a few numbers. I got to refer to my notes, but you see, this whole thing with the psych meds, it's a failed experiment where we treat people as if human life is based on brain chemistry rather than the 4 elements that I observe: the physical, the mental, the emotional, and spiritual, that makes a real human being. So in today's news, Big Pharma tries to buy their way out of the opioid epidemic with $10 to $12 billion. That's right in the news daily. State attorney generals say the damage to America is over $1 trillion. There's a company called IQVIA, and they're the largest provider of U.S. physician prescribing data. In 2017, the total number of kids 0 to 17 years old on psychiatric drugs was 7,213,599. I don't round off that number because every individual is important. That's about 170 baseball stadiums of innocent kids being medicated.
What was that age range again?
That's 0 to 17.
0 to 17.
And that comes from IQVIA. They're the largest company that does statistical analysis of medical procedures. So those are well-documented numbers. So these kids are being medicated, some would say poisoned. So here's a specific example. 102,960 children age 0 to 1 year old were given anti-anxiety medication. Documented numbers. Now, who would do that? Why? So do we allow this to continue? I'd like to recommend a couple documentaries. PBS, The Medicated Child, and A&E, Generation RX. I got to caution you, if you watch these shows about how a corrupt system is over-medicating children, you'll be in tears, you'll throw your shoe through the TV, but it's for parents. It's well to be educated, and if you want to see what they're doing to our veterans, the HBO documentary Escape Fire tells a very interesting story.
So, current tools, talk therapy, psych meds, and then of course there's technology and money, and all these tools are trying to help people improve their mental health. But as I recall in your reading, you said actually, you're speaking to me, JJ, there's no such thing as mental health.
Yeah, I try to make that a little bit of an interesting point of conversation because it's somewhat controversial to say that there's no such thing as mental health. But as you look at the facts, what we've discovered and what most people agree with is that mental health is not just isolated in the brain. Mental health is part of a complete interactive system. Every function of life, and that includes health, career, relationships, includes this integrated process. A social science fails to recognize and develop our entire human capacity, and that's the terrible tragedy where our education is in turmoil. We have an opioid epidemic, we have obesity epidemic, we have stress, and people struggling to the edge because they're getting bad information. They're getting outdated information from the psychological establishment, and we're trying to correct that. We're trying to give people access to their true source of power and ability, and that is those four elements, what I call the human resources.
Got it. So the context for our listeners, so this is a show about startups, and we're talking about integrated behavioral science. And so here's the issue. So I work with startup founders every day, and they're on roller coasters of manic depression, the super highs, the super lows of starting a business. And they also come in carrying some baggage.
Right.
And the baggage is, well, they have ADD, and they're taking Ritalin, and others are on other type of drugs. And my perception is, wow, that is the reality here, but it's not healthy. So let's talk about.
Well, it's not only unhealthy; it's a myth that's perpetrated for mercenary purposes, and I think we're starting to become aware of that. When I was studying this and writing the book years ago, there were people like Peter Breggin, who was a hero of mine, who said, he wrote a book like, for example, your psych meds could be the problem. And so people weren't aware of it. But now you see the opioid epidemic, 70,000 people dead last year. Big Pharma trying to buy their way out of the problem with $10 to $12 billion. And most people have been to a doctor and they feel frustrated that the first thing that comes along is that, hey, we're going to give you a pill and it's going to, and that's a failed solution. And not to get too far into the science of it, but that failure relates directly to incorrect notions that are still prevalent in behavioral science. That's what we're working to correct. That's the technical, scientific part of our work. But what you and I are going to talk more about is how do we apply this for people in real life?
Got it. So in fact, so we've set the table. So we see that there's problems. People are unhappy. They're trying to find their way in the journey of life, and they're turning to different ways to be happier, to feel better, whether it's psych meds or it's talk therapy. So Life Balance Foundation. So what is your solution under this category of integrated behavioral science?
That's a great question, JJ. Thank you. The first solution is knowledge. What we're doing is just talking on this, having this conversation over the radio. We're providing people with knowledge. And that knowledge is that, yeah, you have stress and difficulties and challenges in your life, and your kids are growing up in a who knows what kind of an environment. It's not conducive to their best interest. And we have a system that is capitalizing on your suffering, basically. So how do we get people the relief and the opportunity to become their whole and complete and successful self? And by just giving them information. Again, I'd like to speak directly to the people. You are not just brain chemistry or personality dynamics. And, we all know we're more than the material things we acquire, but that's the message that you get. And that's the message your kids are being hammered with. It's a tragedy. So let's look at fundamentals. You have a body and a mind and a heart and a spirit. And these four elements were forged through time to work together in relation with the laws of nature. That simple awareness empowers you to make a change in your life. If you do the workshop, we have a workshop, and that takes you through a process where you look at your life, what are your strengths and weaknesses, and then you make a plan to improve the areas that have been neglected, and then you put that plan into action, and then you also see how the cultural influences have pushed you in the directions that you get. I mean, we all are products of our culture, and that's inevitable, but you can take control of your life, make conscious decisions, and let's say, for example, it's your body. You haven't exercised enough, and your spirit and your mind and your heart are active, but your body is being neglected. Well, that weak area, that neglected area, drags everything else down. And I like to use a simple analogy because when I teach this in a drug rehab, my audience doesn't have a long attention span, so I got to make it quick and clear. Let's say you want to go somewhere, and you walk out to your car, and one of the tires is flat. You're not going anywhere until you fix the flat tire. And people work the same way. So our workshop helps people to engage with the reality and kind of acknowledge their strengths and weaknesses, and then put a little extra time and energy in building up the neglected areas, and then everything prospers accordingly.
So you've written a book. You've got your foundation set up as a website, and you also want to open a wellness center.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes,
so
indeed.
Tell me about that.
Well, that's a work in progress, and it's the Wellness Center would be set up to provide addiction recovery services, but we're going to take it a lot further than just waiting till these poor kids come into our rehab and the parents are mortgaging their house and it's all a disaster. We want to do a program with online education and prevention. So the three-pronged approach of recovery, education, and prevention is going to not just put a stopgap or provide a Band-Aid, but that's going to turn things around so that we get these numbers coming down on addiction, where we educate people that pills are not the answer. And so education and prevention that's our online part of the program. The healthcare part of the program will be the wellness facility for recovery.
Got it. So the average person, what can they do now to improve their overall well-being?
Well, believe me, folks, I know that there are many of you who are responding to this favorably and saying, yeah, that's who I am. I mean, I hear that in drug rehabs all the time from people who are a tough audience, and they say, yeah, that's who I am. Why didn't anyone tell me that? So the first thing you can do is just do an inventory. Look at your life from the perspective of your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And what are your strengths and weaknesses? It takes a little self-awareness, but the payoff is that when you fix those areas that are neglected, it's just like fixing the flat tire, and you can get to where you want to go. Now, we are working hard to get the Life Balance Foundation up and running, to get, and I think JJ, his mentorship and advice has been helpful. If he were the CEO of our company, this would take off and we'd be serving millions of people in no time. But right now we're working to develop the recovery facility and the online education and prevention to make this knowledge available to people.
So for the average person to take action now, first thing is self-assessment, an inventory of strengths and weaknesses, and then decide how they might pivot or change behavior, address areas of weakness.
Exactly. Now, at the website, it's set up just for information. It's for free information, and that would be lifebalancefoundation.com. So if you want to get some background information, there's some excerpts from the book, the discussion of the problem, and on one of the pages, you can contact me, and I do the workshop on an individual basis.
Wow.
So if people think that this would be beneficial, they can check that out. But, to me, that's not satisfying enough. I mean, yeah, I love working with my clients and helping people to overcome their difficulties and start to live that life that they are able. But really, there's so many people. We need to develop this as a full interactive workshop online where everybody in the world can actually come and benefit from this. And we want to make it very cost effective. And we want to keep in mind our purpose is that there's suffering. There's unnecessary suffering. And there's a limit on our human progress right now. In fact, there's this feeling in America that things are in decline. A lot of people are concerned that we're not making progress. Well, the progress will begin with this online education where people, one at a time, are able to maximize their human potential and the cumulative effect of that. And we also are going to build a community, a social network that supports people in their questions and experience, and they can share their knowledge. So we've got some great ideas, and we're working on making these plans happen. Business is not my forte, so I work as an addiction caregiver. I work as a physical fitness instructor, and I'm trying to learn the ropes, and that's why I'm in touch with JJ, because he's an expert on how to start up a business, how to make things happen. So we're trying to get the foundation up and running. I'd like to mention that if there's any people with business skills, communication skills who would like to be involved with Life Balance Foundation, you can contact me at the website. There's a link. And we're looking for people with we're looking for good people who want to do great things.
Cool. Well, let's back up a bit.
Okay.
And my audience tells me when I bring someone on like yourself, they want to know more about you. So let's go way back. Let's go back to your childhood.
Okay.
And
that's way back. That's a long time ago.
What were you like as a kid?
Wow. Well, I grew up in Michigan, so we did some things that we were outdoors a lot, and even in the winter, And that's the way most kids were back then. And it was such a great experience. I remember going to a field that's now a hospital, rode my bike over to a field, and there was a little creek running through this field, and it had tadpoles in it. And you could take the tadpoles and catch them in a bottle, and then they would grow up to be bigger tadpoles. And I'd put them back in the river when they got a little bigger, but obviously they eventually become frogs. And so this little field was like my world of discovery, and it was just so great. And it's kind of tragic that kids don't have that more these days. So I grew up in Michigan. It's a pretty conservative area compared to California. I came out here in 1979, and I love it, but the old values, the conservative values that we had when we were kids, that never loses its worth. So that was my experience as a kid.
So I grew up in Kansas, and I spent most of the year digging holes. I don't know what it was. We just dug a lot of holes. We built forts.
Okay.
And that's a wonderful memory for me of me with a shovel and digging up our
And JJ,
backyard.
what kind of memories do kids have nowadays? They're in an urban environment with all these ubiquitous screens
Virtual
blaring
reality,
at them.
yeah.
And, there's something lacking. So a big part of the Life Balance Foundation, our big part of our teaching is there's a strong environmental component, that it's that connection with nature. You see, nature is the source. Your physical, mental, emotional, and your spiritual reality are grounded in a home. And that home we call Mother Earth or nature or whatever you call it. It's important. And whether you're in a concrete cocoon in the middle of New York and you do nothing but look on your cell phone and watch videos, then you're disconnected from the reality of your home. And a big part of our teaching is that this is an irreplaceable asset, that the environment, nature, everybody can get access. You can go to the beach, you can go to the lake, you can go up in the mountains, you can have a potted plant, you can go to a safe park. That's an important element in making a person whole and complete. And so what you did, what I did and you did, we were blessed. We were fortunate. And we've got to give that back to kids nowadays. Some opportunity, there's got to be a way.
Yeah. I was reading your bio, and you mentioned your grandmother, that she had a big impact in your life.
She sure did. I mentioned one little story that I think is really beautiful. My grandma cared with all her heart. And one day she told me, life is like a puzzle. And she didn't explain exactly what she meant. I wanted her to explain that, but she showed me. And what I found is that life is like a puzzle with no photo on the box. And it seems confusing.
I love that description.
Thanks. But when you put all the pieces together, you'll see that the big picture is love. And my grandma personified that, and I think that's the story, that we're all trying to piece together all our different experiences and the different influences and the confusion that we encounter. But at the end, I believe that that's going to be revealed to us, is that it's about love. It's about building community, sharing love. And so, again, technology is a wonderful thing, but it can almost become a substitute for human relationships. It can become a substitute for a community. So we're trying to basically, Life Balance Foundation is about going back to old values, old-fashioned values and the fundamentals. May I give you a quick little story? The Super Bowl trophy is named after Coach Vince Lombardi, and he was coach of the Green Bay Packers, and they won the first national. They were just far and away superior team when NFL football became popular. And after they had won a national championship and they got back to training camp the next season, and the first day he held out a football and he said, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And what that's telling us is if we get back to fundamentals, we'll build a team, we'll build children, we'll build the finest generation in the world, and we'll build our lives to be something that we want, because technology gives us a lot of potential, but it's taken away. We haven't learned how to adjust to it and how to use technology in our best interests. So Life Balance Foundation is about discovering and developing those ways that we can use technology wisely, prudently, and productively. And so again, if you're interested in this, there's some information at lifebalancefoundation.com, free information. And if you've got business skills, which I'm certainly lacking, you're welcome to contact me and see if maybe we could work together to develop this knowledge and this service to people.
So as you grew into the adult that I see today, you devoted yourself to healthcare and addiction recovery.
Yes, sir.
Why is that?
It's interesting. I wasn't a really healthy kid. I had asthma. I was kind of chubby, and asthma is a pretty terrible experience when you're gasping for breath. But I wanted to play sports in high school, so I studied. I loved reading, so I studied how to get healthy, and I practiced at it. And so, thank God, I'm able to do things now. I'm 70 years old. I can put my gear in my pack and go up in the mountains for a week. And so, but that took work. And a lot of people, they're healthy kids and they just take it for granted. I had to work for it. So that shows that you can have deficiencies in your life, but if you work at overcoming them, if you acknowledge that and work at it, you can make your weaknesses into a strength. And that's what we're trying to teach people, is how to do that. We're trying to support people in that worthy endeavor.
So coming back to the here and now with your work, one of the takeaways that I have from the reading is to start the kids off right, to start them early in making better choices.
That's a great point, JJ. Engage children early and often with balanced living. They have things like, if you go online, you can see some great websites that are like Online Sesame Street, and they're great for education. Integrative behavioral science applies to people from day one. It goes through teen transitions and on through adulthood. So our program is really a universal program that it applies to everybody in the world, and it starts the moment you're born, because that's the best time to begin to educate a child that they are a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual being, and make sure that they get attention and action for all of those elements.
Yeah, and this is where I see, I hate to use sweeping terms, but society or parents or whoever it is today, is the kid is acting out in the classroom. He maybe the kid needs exercise, and so that's when they start throwing the meds at him and trying to put him in some little box.
Yeah, JJ, that's very important. Thank you for that. People, you can't remember, and I can't remember, but when we were 1 day old, we were so sensitive to every little breath of air and every little sound and smell. Kids are very sensitive. And now me, I'm a tough, grizzled critter. I'm 70 years old, I've adapted. But kids are so exquisitely influenced by their environment. And so if they are put in a world where there's noise and pollution, constant noise and pollution, and electromagnetic frequency is even recognized. They don't let them run high tension cables over schools. And the toxins in our food, the herbicides, the pesticides, the residual growth hormone, the things in the water, like in Flint, Michigan, they've got all kinds of problems, but the things in our air that we breathe. A lot of people aren't blessed to live right near the beach like we do. So all of these toxins and environmental influences, a motorcycle going by, that 100 years ago, that would be like a lion threatening your life. Smoke from a normal day, everyday pollution, that would be a sign of a forest fire that would put you on alert. All these influences, I'm just saying, they add up and they stress children out, and then the kids go to school and they're hyperactive or they're overly sensitive, and then we want to suppress them with drugs. It's a horrible system. It's a horrible mistake. Yeah. And a lot of that goes back to psychology having an error in their way of thinking that goes back 300 years ago, where they basically treat people as if they're a mechanical system. But actually, people are an organic system, a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual system.
Yeah. So terribly interesting to me because of an entrepreneurship perspective, because the creativity, which is the source of invention to build new solutions, to build companies, comes from that childlike behavior. I think Picasso said something to the effect of is that every child is born an artist, and the challenge is how can she or he stay like that?
I would agree.
And our educational system, our society, suppresses that. And so I challenge my students to let that child back out, and that it's okay.
Good. Society, it's not parents' fault. Parents can only do so much against this onslaught of misinformation, and parents are struggling. So that's why the Life Balance Foundation. If I never hear from you again, if you just go to the website and you get the notion that your child or anybody who wants to have a fulfilled life, be a success, a true success on every level, you got to go back to basics, and that is to develop the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual qualities that you're given the day you're born, and recognize and appreciate that those are in relation with the natural world. That simple awareness, that simple goal, that simple knowledge can guide a person to really make some profound changes in their life. Now, we're trying to set up the Life Balance Foundation to do that in an interactive, entertaining, interesting way, and to set up a support community. But right now, you can take action. You don't have to be passive and be victimized by a society that's giving you and your kids bad information. So I encourage you, bless your hearts, make a change, because you're able to do that.
So I get it. So with the kids, start them off right. Now, what about the rest of us? Can we change?
Sure.
Can we reprogram ourselves?
Well, it's not easy. And so that's why we're trying to set up the Life Balance Foundation, the website, so that it's an interactive workshop. The workshop is already in the book. And I do, like I said, I do the workshop individually for people. But we really want to make this accessible to millions of people who really need this knowledge and growth, opportunity to grow. So right now, what people can do, again, I'm trying to put it as quick and accessible terms as I can so that people could use it just from what they hear. And if you've got some serious issues and you want to do the workshop with me, you can contact me. But the real key is, how do we get some business people to build the foundation, to set up the website where we can do the workshop interactively and make it entertaining. I want it to be like Disneyland, not like a chore. But you see, balance is cool. When you're a physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually engaged person and you're connected with nature, you're a powerful person. You're able to do things that the average incomplete person can't do. So how do we change things? I think we're going to use knowledge and education to make a huge difference in the world.
So could you describe an example of a success story where maybe it's an adult has pivoted, a anonymous person, I suppose, but has gone from a unhealthy to a healthier lifestyle?
The first example that pops into mind was about 10 years ago. One of my clients, He was a very successful business person. He'd been one of the first people that jumped off the ski ramps and did somersaults 20 years ago, whenever that first started. So he was a great guy, but his life was out of balance. And I'm not going to go into the details, but when he read the book and he found these principles, when he took it to heart and he set out on a kind of a do-it-yourself improvement program, and it totally changed his life. He'd actually been in trouble with the law and some things, and he got the love of his son back. He got custody. Eventually, he got custody of his son. He fixed the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Wherever he found strengths and weaknesses, he really worked at it, and he took it seriously, and he made a tremendous change. Now, everyone can do that. It's hard to do it on your own like he did.
Yeah. And so when you're making a big change, is it progressive little steps or is it cold turkey 100%?
Great question. Small steps to success. You're not going to overwhelm yourself and revamp your life overnight. But that's the great part about the workshop, is that we take people step by step. You look at little 1, 2, 3, 4. Where's your life? Where's your strength? Where's your weakness? And then you just set little goals, small steps to success, to answer your question.
So moving a slightly different direction, one of the things we teach in the classroom and also in our incubators is the power that others have to be mentors and advisors.
Right.
I advocate that everybody have an advisory board, a personal advisory board, which could be your rabbi or priest. It could be your insurance agent. It could be an attorney. It could be a physical therapist, and this powerful group of folks that can give you input. Do you have advisors? Do you have mentors that you rely on today?
Boy, that's a tough issue, because I'm kind of on the cutting edge here, and I'm moving forward, and not a lot of people are up to speed on this. You're one of the, I'll be honest with you, JJ, you're one of the people that I think I could see as a mentor. You have business experience, you're an author, you care for animals, you're a professor, but people, I've really pretty much been pioneering this thing on my own. So, but I do have mentors. I have Holy Scripture, and then I have the opportunity to go up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and there's a spirit of eternal existence that it doesn't talk to you, but the sound of the wind, the sound of a stream, just a bubbling stream. It's like an orchestra. It's like a symphony orchestra, and that cleanses your mind and it raises your spirit. And you come back to the city and you're refreshed and your thinking is clear again. And then it gets all polluted when you walk into a 7-Eleven. But these are the basic sources of wisdom and knowledge and support. Come from nature, comes from the power of prayer, comes from physical exercise, it comes from friendship, it comes from reading books. It comes from a sense of community. That's where I think we can all find, if we get back to the basics, we can all find our way.
Yeah, one thing that I encourage others is to just ask. So people are honored to help in most cases, and so if you are looking for a mentor, an advisor, reach out to people, express that you admire them and that you're on a journey and that you could use some help. And I tell you, 9 times out of 10, people will fall all over themselves to help you. So all you got to do is ask.
Okay.
A personal question here, you're taking some risk by doing what you're doing. You've devoted a lot of time.
50 years.
Yeah. Do you have a fear of failure? Does anything haunt you at all?
Yeah. My fear is that if I was 50 or even 60, I'd be sailing along and it'd be a party and I'd be having fun with this. But I got to face my mortality, and I feel healthy. Thank God I feel great, but I'm 70. And this knowledge, this new science, it can have a tremendous impact. It's the answer for so many challenges that people are facing. And if I don't make this happen, if I don't get this book off of the shelf and out into people's lives and and you know what, it's not just a book. 20 years ago, I had just written the book and been happy, but nowadays you have to have a website and make it interactive. And all this is challenging to me. I'm a book person. I'm an old-fashioned person. And so, yeah, my fear is that if I don't do a good job here and find the right people to work with, and this knowledge never gets out to people, it could be a loss for humanity.
Yeah, so I think I share some of that, is that our time on Earth is limited, and given that, I want to do the things that have the most impact, selfishly provide me the meaning, pleasure.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So what inspires you? What gives you hope?
Wow. I don't think I have a lot of hope. I think I have dogged determination that the world can be so much better, that people's lives can be so much richer. And I've been given an opportunity to work on this subject, in this field. And so I have dogged determination that I'm going to do my very best to get this information and give people a chance to live their life in a complete way, and to repair those weak areas and renew those neglected elements, and to use all their human resources to have a full life. My hope is for the future that we could raise the finest generation in the world. Right now, we have that ability, we have that opportunity, but technology is overwhelming us. We're all waiting for a technological solution, and that's not going to happen because the problem is fundamentally human. It's organic. It's real life. And so a new science of psychology, a new behavioral science will awaken people. It'll guide people. It'll inspire people to teach their children the right things from day one. And if we all do that, if we'll start small, one person here, one person there, but this can grow. It resonates with people. It sounds so realistic. And I've taught this again in addiction rehabs, and this is a tough audience. And for the folks, they hear these simple principles and they go, yeah, that's me. Why didn't anybody tell me that? So I know this is resonating with a number of people who hear this. And please change. You can change your life. You can make a difference. And we're coming as soon as we can with the foundation and the workshop and the online to give you that support.
So let's look into the future. It's 10 years from now. And you and I are celebrating a decade. What happened in that 10 years?
We planted a seed. We gave people a home where they can come and rediscover who they really are, and that would be Life Balance Online. And that seed has started to grow, and more people. It's become enough of an international community that people support one another, and they share their knowledge and experience and hope, because I certainly don't have all the answers, but I have the basic principles that I can show people. And when people start to put that to work, they'll share the knowledge. How do I get my kids to read or eat good food, or where do I find a community of people I'll be at home with? And so that the online community is going to allow us to do that sort of work. So if we can plant that seed, it'll grow, because if there's such a need, business people I talk to call this a need in the marketplace, and it certainly is a serious need, and we've got a serious solution. We've got a new science. There have been 5 major schools of psychology. This is number 6. This is superior. It's more effective and realistic, and it's going to catch on. But How do you make that happen, JJ? How do you make that happen?
Well, we're going to celebrate in 10 years. That's so you got enough point. So
Good.
we just have a couple minutes. Are there any questions that I didn't ask you that you thought I should or think I should?
Those are really good questions. Thank you again. I think your questions were excellent. I'd like to ask you, do you recognize that you have strengths and weaknesses? I'm not going to get into the specifics, but does that make sense to you?
Oh, it does absolutely.
As a model of human behavior.
And so I advocate that inventory, that personal inventory. And, it's interesting. One thing, we may or may not be on the same plane, is you have weaknesses and you have strengths. So where do you put your energy? Working on your weaknesses or accentuating your strengths?
Well, that's a good question, and I've studied that. And it's a funny thing. When people hear about integrative behavioral science, they quite often have a tendency to they want to build up their life, and they start to work on the area that's already strong. For example, let's say somebody is physically fit and they want to balance their life, so they'll even emphasize physical fitness even more. That's not going to work. Mm-hmm. You got to look at maybe your spirit's been neglected, or your relationships are weak, or you don't put enough good information into your brain, or you don't spend some time outdoors. So it's really about fixing that flat tire. And that's what really makes the whole vehicle go.
Got it.
And I would like to mention one thing. We're not going to suggest if you get into the life balance knowledge base, we're not going to suggest to people how they should exercise or what they should read or who they should love or how they should connect with a higher power or where they should enjoy the outdoors. But we say with firm conviction and certainty that a complete successful human being has to be active and engaged on every level. And that's just the principles of the universe. That's how we were developed, and that's real life.
Got it. So your book, is it available for purchase yet?
The book is finished. Call it a finished manuscript. If there's any literary agents out there, maybe we could talk. But the book is not a book. It's a platform. It's a platform to develop. Because, again, books, who reads books nowadays? I don't know. So you're a professor. So the fact is that we want to do an interactive online version of the book. That's really going to reach. We're going to do a documentary film that will tell this story. It's going to be fascinating and give people another perspective on this. So the book's not immediately available, but we're going to have that. Again, that's part of the Life Balance Foundation, what we're working on.
So if people want to get in touch with you, it's they just go to the website and there's a contact?
Yes, sir. There's a link at the website. The website is lifebalancefoundation.com. And anybody can email me. That's George@Life Balance Foundation. So, I'd like to hear your opinion. Most people agree with this, but I've made a lot of progress in my research and my book. I've learned a lot from people who don't agree, so feel free to express your opinion.
So, George, I want to thank you very much. Our guest today has been George J. Michael, founder of lifebalance.com. Please visit the
lifebalancefoundation.com.
Oh, there we go.
Lifebalancefoundation.com.
I am corrected. And so please visit the fullerton.edu website and drill down to the center of entrepreneurship. Also, you can follow me, John Bradley Jackson, on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And we will see you next week. George?
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening, and bless your hearts, and vaya con Dios.
Very good.